I held the pawnshop receipt in one hand, and the empty shoebox in the other. She didn't just cheat. She sold the ring I spent 4 months designing, the one I once imagined sliding onto her finger as we built a life together. $450. That's what I was worth to her. I stood there in the doorway of the apartment we once called home, staring at the spot where our future was supposed to begin. The silence was deafening. But in that stillness, something snapped inside me, not with rage, but clarity. She thought I'd cry. She thought I'd beg. She thought I'd stay. Instead, I walked out. Not because I was weak, but because I finally remembered who I was before I gave everything to someone who didn't deserve it. I'm not a backup plan. I'm not a doormat. And I'm sure as hell not something you pawn off for half $1,000 and a fling with a coworker. So Brianna, if you're watching this, thank you. Because losing you helped me find me. If this story hit you in the gut, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you believe real men deserve real respect. Your voice matters here. You're not alone. Let's rebuild together. I should have stayed at work. That's what I kept telling myself as I stood frozen in the doorway of my own bedroom, still holding a brown paper takeout bag of tacos and the small velvet box that was supposed to change our lives. Inside the room, I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. My girlfriend Brianna, naked, tangled up with a guy I didn't recognize. Some tan, gym-sculpted, smug-looking stranger who jumped up like he was on fire the second he saw me. Sheets flew. Curses were muttered. But Brianna? She didn't flinch. She didn't even look guilty. She rolled her eyes like I'd just ruined her spa day. It was just once. Get over it, she said, without a hint of remorse. He's better in bed anyway. Time stopped. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the tacos. I didn't demand an explanation. I just stared, trying to process how 5 years of love, laughter, and late-night whispered dreams could dissolve into this. I turned around, walked out, and never looked back. But that was only the beginning. Because what she didn't know was what I was carrying in my jacket pocket that night. A ring. My name's Stephen Daniels. I'm 35, born and raised in Austin, Texas. Graphic designer by trade, quiet by nature. I don't make waves. I don't seek attention. But when I love hard. And for 5 years, I loved Brianna Reynolds like my life depended on it. We met at a friend's engagement party. She was loud, funny, a little chaotic, the kind of woman who walked into a room like it belonged to her. I was the guy holding a beer in the corner, trying to figure out if it was okay to pet the host's dog. Opposites attract, right? She liked that I listened more than I talked. Said I made her feel grounded. I liked how she made life feel less routine. At first, we were magic. I'd never had anyone look at me the way she did. Like I was the only man in the world. We moved in together 2 years after dating. Talked about marriage, kids, maybe moving to the suburbs one day, her idea, not mine. Lately, though, something had changed. She stayed late at work more often. Her phone lived face down. Her hugs got shorter. Our laughs fewer. I chalked it up to stress. She said I was imagining things. I wanted to believe her. I chose to believe her. So when we landed a huge new contract at my firm that Thursday, my boss let me off early. I thought it was a sign. I stopped by her favorite taco place, picked up the spicy pork carnitas she loved, and planned to surprise her. In my pocket was a ring I'd spent 4 months designing. A custom sapphire, not a diamond, because she once told me diamonds were cliché. I planned to get down on one knee right there in our living room. No big production. Just her, me, tacos, and forever. But forever died the moment I opened that door. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even her sleeping with someone else. It was the smirk. The way she looked at me when she said, "He's better in bed anyway." As if I was the one who should be ashamed. That's the moment something inside me turned cold. And from there, I started taking everything back, piece by piece. We weren't always broken. There was a time when Brianna would rush to the door to meet me after work, wrap her arms around my neck, and whisper, "Missed you today." A time when we'd stay up until 2 a.m. debating the best pizza topping or binge-watching true crime documentaries under the same blanket. That version of us, of her, feels like a lifetime ago. We met in the most ordinary way, which made it feel even more extraordinary. She was the burst of color in my grayscale world, charming, witty, with this restless energy that lit up every room. I was quieter, more reserved. She said I calmed her chaos. I said she woke me up from sleepwalking through life. For years, we were steady. Not perfect, but solid. We moved in together after 2, built a life out of shared Spotify playlists, Sunday Target runs, and lazy coffee-fueled mornings on our tiny apartment balcony. People used to say we looked like we'd been together forever. But over the past few months, the rhythm changed. She started pulling away in subtle, almost imperceptible ways I tried to excuse. Her phone stayed locked more often. Her kisses felt distracted. She laughed at my jokes less. When I'd reach for her at night, she'd roll over, mumble something about being tired, and drift off. I asked her if something was wrong. She said work had been stressful and that I'd been a little distant lately too. She didn't like confrontation, so I let it go. I wanted to believe it was just a phase. I kept telling myself, this is what long-term love feels like. It ebbs and flows. Just ride the wave. Still, deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That Thursday, when my boss told me to head home early to celebrate landing a major client, I saw it as my chance to bring us back. A little spark to remind her who we were. I picked up her favorite tacos from the truck on South Lamar, the one where the owner always greeted us with, the usual, "Lovebirds." And I slid that small velvet box into my jacket pocket, the one with the sapphire ring I'd saved for months to buy. I walked up those stairs thinking I was about to start forever. Instead, I walked straight into the end. The apartment was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. Usually, when I got home before her, I'd hear music playing in the kitchen, or the soft hum of her favorite true crime podcast in the background. That day, there was only stillness. I pushed the door open gently, balancing the takeout in one hand, the small velvet box pressing against my chest inside my jacket pocket. I had this dumb smile on my face, ready to surprise her. Maybe we'd sit on the couch, eat tacos, talk about nothing for hours like we used to. But then I heard it. Not the front door opening. Not footsteps. Not even voices. Just sounds. Rhythmic. Breathless. Intimate. Coming from our bedroom. At first, I didn't react. My brain didn't want to process what my ears were telling me. I just stood there in the hallway, tacos in hand, as my heart began to pound hard enough to drown out every rational thought. I walked toward the bedroom slowly, like I was underwater. Every step made it harder to breathe. My mouth was dry. My palms were sweaty. A tiny voice in my head screamed, "Don't open that door. Just leave. Pretend you never came home early." But I did. And in an instant, the world I thought I knew shattered. There she was, Brianna, wrapped in someone else's arms, his shirt halfway off, her body tangled with his like they were on vacation, not cheating in the apartment we built together. Her back was arched. His face was buried in her neck. They didn't even notice me. Not right away. I cleared my throat. Loud enough to stop everything. They jolted like I'd fired a gun. The guy scrambled for his pants, cursing under his breath, stammering about not knowing she had a boyfriend. But Brianna? She just looked at me. Not shocked. Not scared. Just annoyed. "Jesus, Steven," she snapped, yanking the sheet up. "You're supposed to be at work." Like I'd ruined her evening. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "How long has this been going on?" She rolled her eyes. It was just once. Get over it. I just stared at her, blinking. Waiting for some kind of remorse to show up. An apology. A tear. Something. Anything. Instead, she delivered the final blow. He's better in bed anyway. That did it. That short, heartless sentence was the bullet. The part of me that wanted to yell, gone. The part that wanted to cry, shut down. Something inside me just disconnected. I didn't say another word. I turned around, walked to the kitchen, placed the taco bag gently on the counter like it mattered somehow, then grabbed my wallet, car keys, and laptop. She followed me halfway to the door. Where are you going? Don't be so dramatic. I didn't respond. I closed the door behind me. Locked it. And I drove away like a man who just watched his whole life burn down. Not with rage. Not even grief. Just silence. The air outside felt colder than it should have for April in Texas. I stood on the curb for a second, gripping the steering wheel harder than I needed to. My hands were trembling, but not from anger, not yet, anyway. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. It was worse than that. I felt nothing. Like my body had hit an emotional circuit breaker. Everything inside had just shut off. I drove in silence. No music. No GPS. Just me, the sound of tires humming against the road, and the echo of her voice still ringing in my ears. It was just once. He's better in bed anyway. I could still see the shape of her smirk. That careless, superior twist of her lips like I was the one who had let her down. Like the betrayal was a minor inconvenience. I don't remember deciding to go to Caleb's place, but somehow, that's where I ended up. Caleb had been my closest friend since college, one of the few people who knew the real me. He lived about 15 minutes away, in a quiet condo on the east side, always stocked with beer and silence when you needed it. When he opened the door, he took one look at my face and stepped aside. Guest room's made up. I'll grab you a beer. I didn't even take off my jacket. I just sank into his couch like gravity had tripled, stared at the dark TV screen, and tried to replay the scene in my head as if maybe I had misunderstood. As if maybe it hadn't happened the way it felt. But no matter how I turned it around, the truth sat there like a weight in my chest. This was real. She cheated. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. And I had been carrying an engagement ring in my jacket pocket like a fool. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there in Caleb's guest room, eyes locked on the ceiling fan spinning in slow, steady circles, trying to feel anything. Grief. Rage. Pain. But all I felt was empty. And somewhere in that hollow space, something cold and clear began to form. By morning, the numbness had hardened into something sharper. Not rage. Not yet. But clarity, the cold, focused kind that comes after a fire has burned through everything. The kind that tells you it's time to rebuild, but first, you need to clear the wreckage. I sat up in Caleb's guest bed, still fully clothed, shoes on. My phone was blinking with missed calls and unread texts. I didn't open any of them. I didn't need to. I knew exactly who they were from. And I knew exactly what I had to do. First, I called my office. Told them I needed a personal day. No explanation. Just a quiet, something came up. Then I grabbed my laptop and opened the folder labeled Shared Life. Passwords. Accounts. Documents. All of it. It was time to take everything back. The lease on our apartment was in my name. Brianna had shaky credit when we moved in, so I handled the paperwork. I called the landlord, explained, briefly, that the relationship was over and I'd be vacating. He offered a neutral, "These things happen," and told me about the early termination clause. 1 month's rent. Done. I paid it on the spot. Next came the utilities. Electric. Internet. Water. All in my name. All gone by the end of the day. No lights. No hot shower. No Netflix for her to cry to. No DoorDash deliveries on my credit card. Speaking of which, I logged into my credit card account and removed her as an authorized user. She'd been using it for months, online shopping, yoga classes, sometimes even gas. I'd let it slide. Love makes you generous. Betrayal makes you careful. By noon, I had cut every financial tie. I was no longer her safety net. Each click, each phone call, each confirmation email was a small act of taking myself back. A silent declaration: you don't get to hurt me and still live off the life we built together. I closed my laptop and sat still for a moment. It was strange, the satisfaction I felt. Not petty, not vengeful. Just clean. Like setting down something heavy I'd been carrying for too long. She'd made a choice that night. Now I was making mine. And if Brianna thought her cruelty ended with one careless smirk, she hadn't yet begun to understand what real consequences looked like. I waited until I knew she'd be gone. Brianna had yoga every Tuesday at 6 p.m., some overpriced, candlelit studio across town that she once described as healing for the soul. The irony didn't escape me. I parked 2 blocks away, just in case. Old instincts kicking in. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want a confrontation. I just wanted to disappear cleanly, without shouting, without drama, without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me break. The apartment key still fit. The door still creaked the same way it always had. But everything else felt foreign. Like I'd stepped into a showroom version of our life, empty, staged, and fake. I didn't take much. Just the essentials: my clothes, laptop, chargers, hard drives, a few framed photos I wasn't ready to burn yet. I left behind the couch we picked out, the kitchen where I paid for, the books we both pretended to read. I didn't need any of it. The last thing I did before walking out was place the key on the counter next to a short note I scribbled on a torn envelope. Lease ends in 30 days. Utilities disconnected. Good luck. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Then I closed the door, this time not gently, and left without looking back. As I turned onto the main road, I caught a glimpse of her car coming the other way, headlights flashing for a second like a bad omen. Our eyes met briefly through the windshield. Her face changed instantly. First confusion, then realization, then panic. For a split second, I almost stopped. Almost. But instead, I kept driving. And just like that, I was gone. The storm hit my phone not long after. By the time I got back to Caleb's place, there were 9 missed calls. 26 texts. 2 voicemails. Then 39. 43. 50. It was like watching someone drown in real time. Her tone flipped from angry to frantic to pleading in the space of a few hours. I didn't read any of it. I didn't need to. I knew how this would go. First denial, then desperation, then blame. The stages of someone watching their carefully constructed world fall apart, and realizing they were the one who lit the match. But just because I didn't respond didn't mean I wasn't feeling it. I lay awake again that night, phone on silent, staring at the ceiling. There was no peace yet. No closure. Only this strange hollow ache in my chest, like something had been ripped out violently, but the pain hadn't caught up to the damage yet. The truth is, you don't always cry when your heart breaks. Sometimes, you just go quiet. The texts eventually slowed. Then stopped. By the 3rd day of silence, I assumed she'd finally accepted it, maybe even moved on. Brianna was the type who couldn't sit still emotionally. She'd either spin the story to her friends or land on someone else's couch with a new sob story and a bottle of wine. Either way, I was fine being erased from the narrative. But fate wasn't finished unraveling the truth. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a message from Layla, one of Brianna's old college friends. We weren't close, but we'd been at enough group dinners and birthday parties together to exchange occasional memes and weekend brunch recommendations. I hadn't heard from her in months. The message was short. I heard what happened. I thought you should know, the guy you walked in on. That was Ethan. Ethan Marks. Her coworker. He's married. His wife's 7 months pregnant. I blinked at the screen, rereading it 3 times like maybe it would change. Ethan Marks. The name didn't immediately register until I remembered one of the countless office stories Brianna used to tell. The charming new hire. The one with the wife who was super controlling and never lets him breathe. The one who made Brianna laugh harder than anyone at work. She always insisted it was harmless. We're just friends. He's like a brother. Of course he was. I stared at the message for a long time, phone clutched in my hand like it might combust. It wasn't just that she'd cheated. It was that she'd done it with a married man. One whose wife was carrying his child. A new layer of disgust crept in, not just for her, but for myself. I had shared my life, my home, my trust with someone capable of this level of cruelty and deception. I called Caleb. He picked up on the first ring. Hey, man. You okay? You remember the guy? I asked flatly. From the bedroom? Not really. I didn't see his face. His name's Ethan Marks. Married. Pregnant wife. There was a long pause. Jesus. That's all he said. But it was enough. I hung up, tossed my phone on the couch, and just sat there, letting the weight of it settle over me like wet cement. She didn't just cheat on me. She'd helped destroy someone else's life too. And somehow, I knew, his wife had no idea. Which left me with a choice I didn't want to make. Do I stay out of it? Or do I tell her the truth? I spent the rest of that day pacing my friend's living room. There was a war inside me. On one hand, it wasn't my marriage. Not my baby. Not my mess. I could wash my hands of it and move on. Leave Ethan's wife to figure things out on her own, if she ever did. Maybe I could pretend I didn't know. Maybe that would be easier. But deep down, I knew that was cowardice talking. I kept thinking about her, this woman who probably spent her evenings folding baby clothes and Googling crib safety reviews while her husband was sweating over mine. The same way I had been buying a ring while Brianna was learning someone else's body. And then I imagined what it would have meant if someone had told me before I walked in. If someone had spared me from finding out the way I did. That was all the clarity I needed. She deserved to know. No drama. No revenge. Just the truth. That evening, I opened Facebook, searched for Madeline Marks, and found her instantly. Her profile picture was of her and Ethan at a baby shower, both grinning with matching mom and dad pins on their shirts. My stomach turned. I stared at the screen for a while, then typed a message. Calm. Direct. Just the facts. Hi Madeline. I'm reaching out because I think you deserve to know something. I recently ended a 5-year relationship after discovering my partner was cheating on me. The man I walked in on was your husband, Ethan. I'm sorry to be the one telling you this. I can provide proof if needed. Take care. I hit send before I could second guess it. A few hours later, she replied. I had a feeling. I just didn't want to believe it. Thank you for telling me. Please, if you have anything, I need to see it. There was no anger in her tone, just heartbreak. The quiet, suffocating kind I knew too well. I sent screenshots of Brianna's texts, including the one where she described the affair as not serious, but worth the risk. She didn't respond right away. And I didn't expect her to. But I knew the damage was done. Not by me. By the people who thought they could cheat in the shadows, and never be seen. I hadn't heard from Madeline since I sent the proof. I figured she needed time and space. That kind of betrayal doesn't just bruise. It breaks things you thought were permanent. I respected her silence. But the universe doesn't stay quiet for long when the truth starts leaking. 3 days later, I got a call from Layla again, Brianna's old friend, the one who first told me about Ethan. "Dude," she said, breathless. "You set off a nuke." I didn't understand at first. Then she filled me in. Apparently, Madeline didn't just confront Ethan in private. She went scorched earth. Took everything I sent her and marched it straight to their company's HR department. The firm Brianna and Ethan worked for had a very clear, very strict policy: no romantic or sexual relationships between coworkers, especially if one had any kind of authority over the other. Ethan, it turned out, was a team lead on one of Brianna's campaigns. It didn't matter that it was off the clock. Their affair violated multiple internal codes. HR launched a formal investigation the same day Madeline submitted the evidence. Emails were reviewed. Calendars checked. Meeting room logs pulled. The same rooms Brianna once called creative think spaces turned out to be the scenes of their secret midday rendezvous. By the end of the week, they were both suspended, pending review. And less than a week after that, they were both terminated. No ceremony. No farewell emails. No second chances. Just escorted out of the building with cardboard boxes and frozen faces. Layla sent me a blurry photo someone had snapped from the office window. It showed Brianna in sunglasses, head down, clutching a half-packed box as she climbed into her car. I stared at it for a long moment. There was no satisfaction in it. Just a strange sense of inevitability, like watching a bridge collapse you once helped build. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I didn't post cryptic quotes on social media like I'd won. Because this wasn't a win. It was just a logical end to a series of selfish, reckless choices. Choices I had nothing to do with. The silence didn't last long. The day after the termination, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't the rapid-fire texts or emotional voice memos like before. It was something more calculated, and somehow, more desperate. She sent an email. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." I didn't open it right away. I already knew what it would say. But curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped it open. It was a long one. Too long. A strange blend of pleading, gaslighting, and veiled manipulation. She started by saying she never meant for any of this to happen, that things just got complicated, and that I wasn't around enough emotionally. She said I had checked out long before she did, and implied that what happened wasn't really cheating, it was more like a cry for help. Then came the demands. Not requests. Not apologies. Demands. I should let her move back into the apartment until she gets back on her feet. I needed to reconnect the utilities and cover rent for 2 months since I ended things so suddenly. I should tell Ethan's wife that things got twisted, and it wasn't really an affair. I needed to call her boss and clarify that it was a misunderstanding to help her get her job back. I read it twice, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. There wasn't a single word about remorse. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." Instead, she painted herself as the victim of a mess I had supposedly made worse by not cooperating. As if her choices were somehow my responsibility to clean up. I closed the email and didn't reply. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just exhausted. Like I was watching someone try to dig themselves out of a hole with the same shovel they used to bury what we had. And for the first time since the night I walked in on her, I smiled, not out of pettiness, but from the deep, still realization that I was finally, truly done. I should have known she wouldn't take silence for an answer. It was just past 11 p.m. when I heard the pounding on the front door. 3 hard knocks, then silence. Then again, louder this time. Caleb was out of town, so I was alone. I looked through the peephole, already guessing who it was. Brianna. She was swaying slightly, mascara smudged, hair a tangled mess like she hadn't slept in days. A half-empty bottle of wine dangled from her hand. Her eyes were wild, frantic, glassy. I didn't open the door right away. Just stood there and watched for a second, steadying my breath. Then she yelled, "Steven, you ruined my life. Open the damn door." I opened it halfway, keeping my foot against the frame. She stepped forward like she was going to push past me, but I didn't move. "You owe me," she slurred, tears now mixing with eyeliner. "After everything we built. For years and you're just done?" I didn't raise my voice. "You threw it away," I said quietly. "I just walked out of the wreckage." She sobbed harder. "Tried switching tactics. I made a mistake. Okay? I was lonely. I messed up. But I didn't think you'd go nuclear." I didn't flinch. "You weren't lonely, Brianna. You were lying. That's different." "I have nowhere to go," she cried, clutching my arm. "No job, no money, no one." "That's not my problem anymore," I said. Her body crumpled slightly. The fire in her voice gone, replaced with this hollow, exhausted whisper. "You were supposed to love me no matter what." "I did," I said. "That's what makes this worse." Then I gently closed the door. And locked it behind me. She didn't knock again. Just sat on the steps for a while, sobbing into her hands, until finally, her sister came to pick her up. I didn't watch them drive away. I just sat on the other side of the door, leaning back against the wood, listening to the quiet. And for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. 3 days passed without a word. No more emails. No knocks at the door. No desperate voicemails or angry rants. It was like she'd finally surrendered to the silence I'd been giving her from the start. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, it's Claire. Brianna's sister. Can we talk for a second?" I stared at it for a while, unsure if I even wanted to open that door. But Claire had always seemed decent, quieter than her sister, more grounded. We'd gotten along at family gatherings. She never seemed to buy into Brianna's drama. I replied with a simple, "Sure. What's up?" She called a few minutes later. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "I'm not trying to take sides," she started, "but I think you deserve to know the truth." She told everyone it was just one mistake. But it wasn't. I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. It wasn't just Ethan. There were others, she continued. One of them was someone she met at the gym. Another guy from her photography class last year. She told me they were flings. Said she was figuring herself out. I thought she was going through something and didn't want to betray her, but... I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. My grip tightened around the phone. I wanted to feel shocked, but I didn't. Just tired. Claire apologized again, then hung up, leaving me standing in Caleb's kitchen, the hum of the fridge the only sound in the room. She hadn't just lied to me once. She had built a life on lies, layered, practiced, intentional. And all this time, I thought I'd been blindsided. But the truth is, I just didn't want to see what was already in front of me. Later that night, Claire followed up with another message. "I'm sorry if this makes things worse, but I figured you'd want to see it for yourself." Attached were screenshots, dozens of them. Text threads, Instagram DMs, blurry late-night selfies with men I'd never seen before. I opened one at random. A message sent during the same weekend I'd flown her out to San Diego for her birthday. "Can't wait to see you again. That thing you did last night, damn. Fire." Another was dated the same week I had met with a custom jeweler about her ring. "Steven's been super distracted lately. He wouldn't even notice if I disappeared for a weekend, lol." There were different names. Different conversations. Some playful. Some explicitly sexual. None of them mistaken for anything else. And in between them, I saw messages to Claire, her sister, confessing everything. Sometimes bragging. Sometimes justifying. Always excusing. "I just don't feel anything when I'm with him anymore. I need to feel alive again. He's so good to me, but I'm just bored." Is that bad? Bored. That word stuck in my throat like a splinter. All those months, while I was carefully planning a future, saving for a ring, working overtime to clear my debts before proposing, she was out feeling alive in the arms of strangers. It wasn't just cheating. It was contempt. A sustained, quiet dismissal of everything we'd promised each other. I set the phone down and stared at the wall, the room oddly still around me. Like time had paused to let the truth sink in. There was no shock left. No more denial. Just a numb clarity that felt like stepping into cold water. How many signs had I ignored? How many late nights did I explain away as work stress, or friends' birthdays, or just one more glass of wine? I remembered her turning away from me in bed, the locked phone, the sudden change in perfume. It was all there. I just didn't want to believe it. Because I loved her. Fully. Blindly. Recklessly. I thought loyalty meant writing it out. That trusting her meant closing my eyes when it hurt. That love, real love, could explain away anything. But it turns out, love doesn't blind you. You blind yourself. A few days later, I realized there was one thing I hadn't retrieved from the apartment. The ring. It had been tucked in the back of my closet, hidden inside an old shoebox under my winter coats. I hadn't been ready to look at it yet, much less hold it in my hands. But after everything Claire showed me, I needed closure. Real closure. I didn't want to keep it. I just wanted it back. One final thing to reclaim before I could let all of it go. I texted the landlord, who still had access, and arranged to stop by while Brianna was at work or wherever she went these days. When I stepped inside, the place looked the same on the surface, but it felt even colder. The kind of cold that comes not from temperature, but from the absence of meaning. I went straight to the closet, pulled out the coats, the shoebox. It was gone. I checked everything. Every drawer. Every pocket. Every corner. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe she had moved it. Then I opened the top drawer of her dresser and saw a receipt for a local pawn shop. Dated 3 days after I walked out. And there it was in black ink. One sapphire engagement ring, $450. That's when it hit me, harder than any of the texts, harder than the night I caught her in bed. She didn't just betray me. She cashed me in. The pawn shop was across town, tucked between a rundown liquor store and an auto body shop with a flickering neon open sign. I stood in the parking lot for a few minutes, debating whether to go in. It felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life. Someone who had been so thoroughly stripped of pride, all that was left was this moment. But then I walked through the door. The man behind the counter barely looked up. "Help you with something?" "I'm looking for a ring," I said. "Sapphire center stone, platinum setting. Custom piece." He pulled out a tray of assorted jewelry. I spotted it immediately. Even under the dusty glass, it stood out, clean lines, deep ocean blue stone. I had spent weeks working with the jeweler to get it just right. Not flashy. Elegant. Like her, I had thought. I picked it up. Turned it over in my hand. Still flawless. "That one's $500, the guy said. "Came in earlier this week." "I know," I replied. "She sold it for less." He shrugged. I paid in cash. No ceremony. No drama. I walked out with the ring in my pocket, not because I wanted it, but because it was mine. Back at Caleb's place, I sat on the edge of the bed and turned the ring over in my fingers. It was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing it differently now. This tiny, beautiful object had once meant everything. I'd imagined slipping it onto her finger while we laughed and cried and talked about where we'd grow old. Now, it was just a symbol of everything I had ignored. All the signs I overlooked. All the loyalty I gave without question. All the dreams I built around someone who had already left me emotionally, long before she ever did physically. I set it down on the nightstand and stared at it for a long while. I was going to give this to the woman who destroyed me, I whispered out loud. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even sadness. It was realization. That ring wasn't a monument to love anymore. It was a reminder of the difference between love and illusion. Between building something with someone, and building it for them while they built something else behind your back. I didn't throw it away. I didn't sell it. I kept it, quietly. Not as a scar. But as proof I'd survived. Because the version of me who had once believed in that ring, he was gone. And the man who replaced him, he was done mistaking hope for loyalty. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It wasn't like I woke up one day and thought, I'm over it. It was more like the absence of ache. Like the pain didn't knock on the door one morning, and I noticed, quietly, that it hadn't shown up. The first real step forward was moving into my own place. It was nothing fancy, a one-bedroom in a quieter part of the city, with creaky floors and mismatched cabinets. But it was mine. No shared closet. No memories clinging to the walls. Just a blank slate and a key that only I held. I bought a few plants, even though I used to joke that I couldn't keep anything alive except takeout leftovers. I started cooking, slowly, learning how to make meals that didn't come in paper bags. Mornings became sacred again, coffee on the tiny balcony, soft jazz humming in the background, a journal open in front of me. The journaling wasn't something I planned. One night I just opened a blank notebook and started writing, everything I hadn't said to her, everything I'd buried. Some entries were angry. Some were tired. Most were honest. And that honesty started peeling something open inside me. I also started therapy. At first, I told myself I didn't need it. That I'd already processed enough. But sitting across from someone who didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't offer half-baked advice, it gave me room to exhale. It gave my confusion shape. My pain, context. Work became a refuge too. Surprisingly, I got promoted. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon and said, I don't know what you're going through, but I've watched you show up every day like a professional. That says a lot. It was validating. Not because of the money or the title, but because for once, someone saw the effort it took just to keep moving forward. I also started running. Nothing dramatic, just a few laps around the park, mostly to clear my head. I wasn't chasing a six-pack. I was chasing stillness. And slowly, without realizing it, I began returning to myself. Not the man I was before Brianna. Not the naive version of me that carried tacos and a ring and a heart full of certainty. Someone else. Someone stronger. Sharper. Someone who knew what it felt like to fall apart, and who chose to rebuild anyway. Meeting someone new wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't looking. I wasn't scrolling dating apps or testing the waters. I was just at a birthday party for Caleb's cousin, one of those casual rooftop get-togethers with craft beer, cheap lights strung along the railing, and a Bluetooth speaker playing a mix of indie pop and early 2000s throwbacks. Her name was Elise. She laughed at the same dumb jokes I used to think only I found funny. She wasn't trying too hard, didn't ask loaded questions, didn't fidget when the conversation slowed. She just talked. Like people used to, before everything had to mean something. We stood there for nearly an hour, talking about coffee rituals and bad childhood haircuts and whether or not cereal is soup. I didn't even realize how much I'd missed that kind of lightness, the kind that doesn't come with a history attached. When the party started winding down, she smiled and asked, "Would it be weird if I gave you my number?" I said no. Because it wasn't weird. It felt good. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled without forcing it. And it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like permission. A week later, I got an email from Brianna. The subject line stopped me cold, closure. I hovered over the trash icon for a moment. But curiosity won. I opened it. It was long, much longer than I expected. She didn't ask for anything. Not this time. No requests. No bargaining. Just confession. She admitted to everything. The affairs. The lies. The manipulation. The moments she took me for granted. She said therapy had forced her to confront the part of herself that used people without realizing the damage until it was too late. I didn't just cheat on you, she wrote. I betrayed you every time I dismissed your love as routine. Every time I chose attention over integrity. You were the safest thing I ever had, and I ruined it. She said she wasn't writing for forgiveness. Just to acknowledge what she broke. I sat with it for a while before replying. Just a few lines. Thank you for your honesty. I hope you find what you're looking for. But you're not part of this story anymore. Then I closed the thread. For good. It's strange, the things you grieve when someone betrays you. It's not just the person, you lose the version of yourself who believed in them. You lose the certainty. The comfort. The little details you didn't even realize you loved until they hurt to remember. The way she used to steal my hoodie and walk around the apartment like it was her second skin. The sound of her laugh echoing down the hallway. The way she whispered goodnight when she thought I was already asleep. Those things don't disappear. They get stained. Even now, months later, I still walk past certain restaurants and instinctively wonder what she'd order. I still hear songs we used to play in the kitchen on Saturday mornings and feel that tightness in my chest before skipping to the next track. But healing isn't about pretending those things never happened. It's about recognizing they're part of the story, but not the whole story. People talk a lot about betrayal like it's a single event. One choice. One night. But it's not. It's the erosion of trust, slow, quiet, invisible until suddenly there's nothing left holding you up. It's death by 1,000 dismissals. 1,000 little lies that build a wall between what you thought you had, and what was really going on. And cheating? It's not just about sex. Not really. It's about selfishness. Entitlement. The belief that someone else's love is disposable. That loyalty is a default, not a gift. That your partner will stay, no matter how many cuts you give them, because they always have. What cheating takes from you isn't just the relationship. It's your sense of emotional safety. Your willingness to believe that someone else's words mean what they say. That love is reciprocal. That trust isn't just a risk, it's a reward. It took me a long time to realize this, but I don't miss her. I miss who I was with her, before I knew better. But I'd rather be who I am now, scarred, yes, but stronger. Wiser. More careful with who I let close. More intentional about how I show up in someone's life. Because the truth is, I didn't lose everything. I just lost someone who never truly valued what she had. And what I found instead, was myself. Have you ever trusted someone with your whole heart? And they shattered it without flinching? Not with anger. Not even with guilt. Just indifference, like your love was a receipt they never intended to keep. Because that's what it felt like. I didn't just lose a relationship. I lost a version of myself that believed love was enough to keep two people honest. If you were in my shoes, if you caught the person you were planning forever with in the arms of someone else, would you forgive her? Or walk away for good? Would you stay and try to rebuild what they so casually destroyed? Or would you burn the bridge, like I did, and walk into something unknown, but honest? I want to know. Not just because I told my story, but because I believe there are more of us out there. More people who loved hard, and got blindsided. So tell me, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your story. Some betrayals don't just break your heart, they build your strength. Because when you survive something like this, when you lose the person you thought was your home, and you still find the courage to stand back up, you don't just become stronger. You become unbreakable. You learn to stop explaining your worth to people who treat your love like a backup plan. You stop begging for apologies from people who only cry when they get caught. And slowly, brick by brick, you build a life you can trust again. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you chose to start over. So if you're watching this, and you're still hurting, still questioning, still wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, you will. Not because they come back, but because you move forward. This isn't the end. This is where the real story begins. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more real, raw stories like this one. Your story matters. And you're not alone.